Okay, I'm going to talk about my great-grandfather, William Marion Padgett, who's buried at Salem Church in Jasper, Georgia. He was born April the 28th, 1844 in Dawson County. He's the son of Asa Padgett and Mary Malinda Padgett. His wife was Susan Elizabeth Cox. She was born May the 10th, 1848. She's also buried at Salem Church, and she was the daughter of Zechariah Holcomb Cox and Sarah Grogan. William and Susan had 10 children. Several died young, and Susan died during the birth of her 10th child, and her name was Susan, and that was in 1886. William was a Baptist preacher, and we have the certificate. It says, "This is to certify that the Baptist Church of Christ at Salem have this day licensed William Padgett to preach the gospel of Christ wherever his lot may be cast." And it's signed, and that's dated May the 23rd, 1885, and it's signed by John Padgett, church clerk. Now this John is the son of old Isaac that's buried there, which was the brother of our Asa, William's daddy.
That's neat. I didn't know we had those records.
William's will was filed I'm not sure what the date is, but it was filed in Pickens County. We have the record of his will and his estate that can be attached to this. And after Susan died, William called the children together. My grandfather was only 2. He had many young children, and he had to sit down with the family and said that he could not manage without a woman in the house to take care of things. So he knew of a girl, and he told him if she wasn't already spoken for, that he was pretty sure that she would marry him. So he took the wagon and went back to Dawson County, was gone about a week, and came back with his new wife. Her name was Mary Malinda Dilbeck. She was the first cousin of his first wife, Susan Cox. Their mothers were sisters and daughters of Richard and Edith Williams Grogan. Malinda had 2 children, Tom in 1887 and Violet in 1890. And then Reverend William Myron died, and she was left alone with her 2 children and numerous children from the first wife that were still young, 6, 7 years old, and just up stair steps going up. Uncle Jasper Padgett lived on the adjoining property next to the Padgett property. His wife was Millie Padgett. She was a sister of Reverend William Myron Padgett. And he realized that Malinda could not make it with all those children and no man in the house. So he decided that he would move the first family out and move them back down to the bottom of the property. So he pulled a little lean-to shack down there and moved my grandpa William and Rhoda and Phoebe and Enoch down there, and forced Malinda to take her 2 children and go back to Dawson County to her parents' house so they could help her with the young children.
Go ahead. So this right here.
This was the license that was issued by the Baptist Church of Salem for William Marion Padgett to be a preacher.
Okay, that's awesome. And then this paper is his will.
This is the will. Wait a minute, you won't.
Okay, there's the will. Okay, and the next page.
Yeah, because it went like that.
Okay, so
There's
some longer pieces of paper.
I don't remember how it was, but.
Perfect.
And then this is the last page.
That's the last page with the signature. Signed. Okay, and then he had a list of.
And this is the list
Of the estate.
the estate division.
This is so interesting. I love how they put how many hogs and how many cows. Got a red cow and
He has 600
What bushels? What's that? So this is the value of the estate. He had a cross-cut saw and a shotgun. 17 beehives, farming tools. Look at that. Farming plow, wagon harness and a buggy. 150 bushel, eight hogs. That is neat. And then the values of it. And that was William Padgett's. Reverend William Padgett.
Reverend William Padgett.
On March the 7th of 1910, William Padgett and Enoch Padgett, sons of Reverend William Marion Padgett, bought all of William Marion Padgett's estate for the sum of $1,800. They paid Phoebe Cantrell $200. This is their sisters and brothers. They paid Tom D. Padgett $200. They paid Malinda M. Padgett $200. Rhoda M. Parker $200. Polly Bruce $200. Violet Padgett $200. And May Cagle $200. Padgett Cagle. That's how the land got to be all together again. And Uncle Enoch and my grandpa William made a will, each to the other. Whoever died first would get the property. At that time, neither one was married. And Enoch died without marrying and without issue, and Grandpa inherited all the property, and that's how he got the 500 acres of property in Jasper and Pickens County, Georgia.
That originally was owned by Reverend William.
Reverend William.
And so his second wife and his
And their
and
children.
their children and his children with his first wife all were paid compensation for that land.
$200 each for their part of the property. $200 in 1910 was a good bit of money.
Yes.
And I asked several people in the family, where did they think that Grandpa and Uncle Enoch got $1,800 to pay off the rest of their family and purchase the property? And my Uncle Thurman said that Grandpa always raised cotton and had a lot of cotton. And then somebody laughed and said, and a little corn.
They grew corn for the moonshiners.
Yeah.
I know the Gospel Ways, they made moonshine.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking about the moonshine, now Uncle Jasper Petty, remember his wife was Millie, sister of Reverend William, he had a government moonshine still. And the rocks that he had did a big retainer wall of rocks, and it's still there. In fact, the newspaper went out before my father, Lloyd, died, and they did a big article in the paper about the Indian mounds that they had found over on the Petty property. So my father marched up to the paper and said, y'all have this all wrong. That was a liquor still. There's never any Indian mounds over there. But they're still there. I haven't been there since I was a kid to see them. But my son said he rode the four-wheeler back there about 10, 12 years ago, and that those
mounds
the
were
walls.
still
The
The
farming
rock walls
wasn't
were
that
still
good,
there.
and a lot of times that's how they made their living.
there. Yes.
And speaking of rock walls, on my property in North Georgia that I inherited from my father and from my grandpa Bill Padgett, William Padgett, William and Uncle Enoch did a nice rock wall on each side of the creek to dam the creek up. And you have to go across the little bridge right by the rock wall to go to my house. And they did that to irrigate the bottom so that they could have corn down there. Because Grandpa always had corn in the bottoms down there. At that time, the creek was a lot fuller than it is now. But that rock wall is still there. In fact, some of the families seem to think that Uncle Enoch had gotten sick. They did it in the wintertime because in the summertime they had to grow corn and cotton and stuff. They did it in the wintertime, and some of the families said that Uncle Enoch got sick that winter working in that cold creek, pulling those rocks out and building that wall, and that he never got over it, and that's what killed him.
Oh, wow.
This is Pickens County map. This is the 13th district, 49th lot, and this is the original Padgett property that I still live at, and there's a nice falls on there called the Padgett Falls.
And so you live on the original land that Reverend William Marion Padgett owned.
Yes.
Because you inherited that from your daddy.
Yes.
That is amazing. There's waterfalls on
Yes.
that. This is a Pickens County plat, and that shows in District 13, Lot 49, that is where the Padgett land is. That is amazing.
And I'm not sure where they are. I'll have to dig them up. I think they're in the safe at North Georgia. But I actually have the deed with the wax seal when that land was granted to the first man that had it
Wow.
from the Indians. And then he moved on, and it was sold on the courthouse steps for 50 cents.
Oh my goodness.
It's like 500 acres.
That's where the
Wow.
Padgetts bought it for 50 cents?
No, the people
The
before.
original owners.
Oh, the original owner.
That was
I
given
wonder
from
about
the
what-
Indians?
Well, about what year was that?
I'm not sure, but we'll pull those deeds out and you can record, you can
Okay.
copy them.